Proverbs chapter 14, we're going to start at verse 13. Wait, verse 20, excuse me. Verse 20. Verse 20 says, "The poor is hated even of his own neighbor, but the rich hath many friends." This is 14, verse 20. Let me again. Are you with me, Lon? 14, Proverbs 14, verse. I know you look kind of confused there. Amen. Anyway, Proverbs 14, verse 20, "The poor is hated even of his own neighbor, but the rich hath many friends. He that despiseth his neighbor sinneth, but he that hath mercy on the poor, happy is he. Do they not err that devise evil? But mercy and truth shall be to them that devise good. In all labor there is profit, but the talk of the lips tendeth to penury. The crown of the wise is their riches, but the foolishness of fools is folly. A true witness delivereth souls, but a deceitful witness speaketh lies. In the fear of the Lord is strong confidence, and his children shall have a place of refuge. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life, to depart from the snares of death. In the multitude of people is the king's honor, but in want of people is the destruction of the prince. He that is slow to wrath is of great understanding, but he that is hasty of spirit exalteth folly. A sound heart is the life of the flesh, but envy rottenness of the bones. He that oppresseth the poor reproacheth his maker, but he that honoreth him hath mercy on the poor. The wicked is driven away from his wickedness, but the righteous hath hope in his death. Wisdom resteth in the heart of him that hath understanding, but that which is in the midst of fools is made known. Righteousness exalteth a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. The king's favor is toward the wise servant, but his wrath is against him that causeth shame. Brother Tom, do me a favor and shut those two back doors, will you? I don't know if you guys can hear that, but if I can hear it, I think anybody can hear it. Amen. Because I don't hear too good anyway. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Heavenly Father, I just would come to you, Lord. Thank you for this time that we can spend together in your word in the book of Proverbs, Lord, that we glean the wisdom that you have for us, that we wouldn't cling to the world's wisdom, but that we would cling to godly wisdom, Lord. Just pray for this time in your word. Teach us, God. Help us to understand. Give us wisdom, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. Verse 20 and 21 are very similar, as far as dealing with the poor, having mercy on the poor and hating the poor. I think most of us that were not rich when we were young, where they were poor people, I think we can understand a lot of times poor people are hated by their own neighbor. And I would believe that to be true from my own experience. And, I've seen it other people too being hated just because they were poor. And a lot of times it's not somebody rich that necessarily hates them as much as the people that think they're better than them. You know what I'm saying? That you might be poor yourself as a kid, or I'm just thinking back at the time when I was a kid. I remember I went to Kiwanis Camp. You know where Kiwanis Camp is? It was quite different back then. The river is actually where we played softball and baseball and stuff like that. That whole place has changed. It's changed a lot since that flood of a couple of years ago too. I don't think some of those buildings, I haven't been back, but if you look at it, you can see the big washout and stuff like that. I'm sure it's completely different. But anyway, it was a camp really for underprivileged children. That's what it was. Kiwanis Camp. The kids that went there were from poor families. And I mean, that's why I got to go, because we didn't have anything. Like I said, my folks didn't have the money to pay attention. They just didn't have anything. So I got to go, which I was grateful for and stuff like that. But I remember there was somebody there that didn't live too far from me, lived on Queen City Boulevard, and I think he was actually poorer than me. I didn't know him personally. I met him at Kiwanis camp, but I knew the family because my brother Dick had delivered papers on that particular thing. So I knew exactly who lived in that particular house. And anyway, I'm not going to mention the name because somebody might know that person, and I surely don't want to run somebody down. But anyway, as a matter of fact, this kid was the same age as me, and that's the first time I met him. And I guarantee you, he may not have been as poor as us, but he wasn't dressed very good. You understand what I'm saying? And right away, a lot of people picked on him. I didn't. I'll be honest with you. Because I was picked on. I didn't. I had a tendency to really befriend those kind of people. I was nice to him. I'll be honest with you, because I know what it was like to be on the receiving end of those things. But when you look back at it, I mean, the people that picked on him, they weren't that much better off than him. You understand? They might have had nicer clothes and some of that other stuff, but every one of us there were poor. We wouldn't have been there. And again, the poor is hated even of his own neighbor. A lot of times, you got somebody in the neighborhood that's poor. Like I guarantee you, the person I'm talking to, you go to that house, and I'll guarantee you, it looked like they were poor. There's junk all around it. It wasn't cleaned up, and so on and so forth. Now, I guarantee you, we were poor, but looking on the outside of the house, I guarantee you, we weren't even allowed to walk on the grass. I mean, I guarantee you, the place looked immaculate. Dad made sure everything looked good. We probably looked like we were rich looking at the outside of our house, and we had a pretty nice house and stuff like that. But we didn't really have any money as far as that goes. And again, a lot of times the poor person, probably doesn't have the nicest clothes and different things, or the stylish clothes. And that's what it was. In the farm school, when we went to country school, we all dressed a certain way. We had farm shoes on. Well, here can you picture me coming to town in second grade, and I went to the Catholic school, and we had to wear slacks. We could not wear jeans to school. I mean, you had to wear dress trousers. What they called as slack pants is what they called them back then. You probably remember that term. I don't know if they do. They still use that term, slack pants? Anybody hear that term? So that's what we had to wear. But I mean, I wore shoes, the same ones that I came from the country school with. And I guarantee you, they were them old farm shoes, and I mean, I liked them. I'll be honest with you, but I was made fun of because of it. But I didn't really mind it all that much because they were nice shoes and they were comfortable. But again, you're going to be hated. You're going to be hated even by his own neighbor. But the rich hath many friends. It's funny how, let's say, for instance, somebody didn't have anything and all of a sudden he wins the lottery, which I'm going to say this right off the top. I do not recommend buying lottery tickets, but I'm just going to use this for an example, because there are people that have all of a sudden attained wealth, and it becomes real obvious that all of a sudden everybody knows you. That's what it boils down to. The rich certainly do have many friends. I've talked to people that were around my age and different things like that, and they would have, they were saying, and the person I'm thinking of was a fairly affluent person in the school. And I remember she was telling me one time, I never got invited to this one party, and how hurt she was. And it kind of surprised her that she wasn't invited. I just told her straight up, if I would have been invited, I would have probably been shocked. That's how much different. Again, a poor person, they don't, generally, your people don't really care that much about you. That's the truth. And it's a bad thing too. It's not a good thing. And I believe this proverb is true to this day. And I see these things sometimes even in churches, that sometimes somebody doesn't have quite as much as somebody else. And it's usually not the more affluent people that are probably mean to them. It's the one that might be just a step above, or think they're a step above. That can be the real problem. I wouldn't recommend, being mean to people just because they don't have nice clothes and rich, this kind of thing. I definitely am against that kind of behavior. But it is a sad commentary on the human race. I believe we just have a tendency to be that way. We try to make ourselves look more than what we really have. And it doesn't really, I don't think anybody's overly impressed with it anyway. Then we see in verse 21, he that despiseth his neighbor sinneth. And again, obviously, this despising here, but he that hath mercy on the poor. And again, the despising would be because he's poor. What should you do? He that despiseth his neighbor sinneth. That it is a sin. God says it's a sin to treat somebody that way. That's what God says. I tell you what, if you see that in your children, they need to be corrected. They need to be corrected. I think about my oldest brother, which he graduated from high school in '65. So this would have been about 60. I think he was in ninth grade. And we lived at, where we lived, 604 North First Street. And he rode his bike all the way out to Burns High, it was called back then, which is about 3 miles. Well, I'll tell you what, a ninth grader back then, it wasn't cool to ride his bike to school. You hit high school, it wasn't cool anymore. I'm guessing it probably isn't cool today either, is it? But see, and because of that, because that was what Tony did, he was made fun of. And I remember people, sabotaging his bike and different things like that. And that's a sin. That's an absolute sin. That's what it is. Making fun of somebody or breaking things on his bike just to belittle him and different things. This is sin. It's absolute sin when you look at it. And I remember there was one rich person that was one person that was doing that, and most of the people that were doing it were not rich. But there was one person that was rich, and I'll guarantee you one thing. I'll say one thing for that rich kid's dad. I remember he corrected him, and he corrected him very severely. And I had a lot of respect for that person for correcting his son. Matter of fact, that boy died in Vietnam. That one that, but I'll tell you what, his dad corrected him. Generally, I'll tell you what, that family, though they were very affluent, they didn't put people down. And that's one thing I noticed about that family. And that particular person had a brother that was a year younger than me. And I would have always looked at him as really he treated me very nice. I mean, he always treated me real nice. Just because they had money, and they did have money, I would have looked at them as probably the richest person in the church. That's how I would have looked. I don't know what their bank account, but to me, they were. They lived in a real nice house on the rich part of town and all this other stuff. But I'll tell you what, there was some real good training, in my opinion, of the dad when he found out about that boy doing that. He was upset, very upset. And that's the way we ought to be, because I'll tell you something. He that despiseth his neighbor sinneth. And I tell you what, you got to look at that as being very wrong. But he that hath mercy on the poor, happy is he. We need to have mercy on the poor. We need to have mercy on people. We just need, I don't care if you're rich or poor, we need to be merciful people. You want to be a happy person? Be a merciful person. Do you think that you're gaining any real happiness from being mean to people and despising people and sabotaging things? I don't believe that's ever going to bring happiness. That's never going to bring happiness. That's sin. It is a sin for you to despise your neighbor because of his poverty. To despise a neighbor in need is sin. To be merciful to one in need is right and brings blessing. To be happy will come from being a blessing to others. If you want to be happy, be a blessing to others. Don't be a nuisance to others. Don't put people down just because they don't look as good as you, or they aren't dressed as nice as you, or maybe you never saw a pair of shoes like that before. You don't treat people. I encourage you, parents, teach your children. If you see that, I'm going to tell you the truth is, I believe we all have that tendency. Like I started out with a young man that was my age in Kiwanis camp. Really, we were all in the same boat. None of us were rich. But why did they treat him like that? That's the first time, because I went to Catholic school. I never knew him. He would have been a public school kid. But, again, he was treated very poorly. And, really, everybody there was really not rich, or we wouldn't have been there. So I tell you what, be merciful to the poor. I don't care what you got or who you are. Be merciful to the poor. Anything less than that is sin. Let's go to verse 22, chapter 14, verse 22. Do they not err that devise evil? Obviously, they do err that devise evil. That's a question there, but obviously, you are erring to devise evil. But mercy and truth shall be to them that devise good. So you're either going to be in truth or you're going to err, and you're either going to devise evil or you're going to devise good. Err means to go astray or wander. That's what error means. You're moving away. You're going in the wrong direction. Those that devise evil end up erring. If you're going to devise evil against somebody, you're going to do the wrong thing. We should never plan and devise, I'm going to get this guy. That's what the Lord's saying here. You don't have that kind of an attitude where I'm going to get this guy or I'm going to get even. You're devising evil. How can I do something to this guy to irritate him or hurt him or whatever? That's devising evil. They do err. You're going to move. You don't know where that's going to take you. It's going to take you far away. They not err that devise evil, but mercy and truth shall be to them that devise good. Those that devise evil end up erring, going down the wrong road themselves. Devious schemes have a way of backfiring. You think you're going to sabotage somebody else, it's going to come back on you. You fall into the trap that you have laid. In contrast, those who develop ways to do good to others, that's what the Bible teaches. We need to do good things to others. Don't sabotage other people. Don't get even with somebody. Don't scheme devious things against other people. Again, those that develop ways to do good to others are paid back with mercy and truth. I tell you what, that's what you need. I tell you what, if you're good to other people, if you're merciful to other people, they have a tendency to have mercy on you. And I'll tell you what, surely God does. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Obviously, I believe we obtain mercy from other people, but obviously we do some things wrong too. And I'll tell you what, if I'm not merciful to others, God's not going to be merciful to me. So I surely want God's mercy in my life. I don't want to err. I sure want truth. Again, I believe when you do the right things, mercy and truth shall be to them that devise good. That's what you really want to do. Always do good. That's one thing I see in the book of Proverbs. Always do the good thing. Don't do the bad thing. Do we sometimes think about going the wrong direction? If you start devising those things against other people, it's going to come back on you. And by the way, it's not going to bring happiness in your life. It's not going to be. You're not going to ever be satisfied. That kind of stuff doesn't bring any real satisfaction. It really doesn't. When we do good to others, they will stick up for us when we are faced with trouble. They will be merciful to us. Again, blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Proverbs chapter 14, verse 23. This is a very simple proverb. In all labor, there is profit. If you need money, go to work. You know what I'm saying? That's really what it boils down to. In all labor, there is profit. But the talk of the lips tendeth to penury. The talk of the lips tendeth to penury. Penury is being poor or poverty or this type of thing. You're not going to have anything. Talk is cheap. Have you ever known somebody that they can talk a lot, but they don't get a lot done? If you want to have profit, if you really want to make some money, get to work. That's pretty simple, isn't it? Get to work. Labor, work is profitable, but talk tends to poverty. I think we've all heard talk is cheap. Those who are all blow and no go. Get to work. You're all talk, but you don't move. You can talk a good streak, you can talk a lot of stuff, but you just need to get to work. It's easy to talk big. It is another thing to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty. You know, I think about people that brag about how much money they're making. I'm thinking about a person that used to brag about how much money he was making. He was a union carpenter. I'm not going to tell you who he was, by the way, but he was a union carpenter. And really, what it boiled down to, he didn't have anything. He talked big. I tell you what, he didn't. He knew everything. I guarantee you, he was very opinionated on everything that he said. He was a know-it-all. But the truth is, yes, he was a union carpenter. He did a lot of talking, but he didn't do a whole lot of working. And really, he ended up with nothing. He just was lazy and he didn't show up to work and stuff. But boy, I'll tell you what, by listening to him talk, you'd have thought, man, this guy is a millionaire. And by the way, I knew this guy even before I was in the Marine Corps. I knew him. And he was trying to talk me into being a union carpenter, which I went a different route. But I mean, I'm glad I didn't go that route and he was talking. At least I worked, as far as that goes. But again, in all labor, there's profit. Again, we need to get to work. But the talk of the lips tendeth to penury or to poverty. Verse 24, Proverbs 14:24, the crown of the wise is their riches, but the foolishness of fools is folly. This really is kind of not that much different than the previous one. In the long run, wisdom pays off with prosperity. I believe that's what we see in the first part of that. Wise men tend to be sound and financially solid. What is wisdom, by the way? We're learning in Proverbs, wisdom is using knowledge aright, using it the right way. You know some things, then you understand some things, and then wisdom. See, this is wisdom. This is the last part here. The crown of the wise with wisdom is riches. Maybe you don't have anything because you're not very wise. And here you can see this other part is foolishness. Foolishness is the direct opposite of wisdom. That's what we see there. And we see a contrast because there's a but in there. But the foolishness of fools is folly. So the contrast of being wise and really having something, God's not against us having something, working for it, not just talking about it, bragging about how much you got and all this other stuff and how wonderful you are. How about just going to work? And again, the crown of the wise is their riches. I believe if you really use the know what you know, and you use that aright, there's going to be prosperity there. But if all you're doing is foolish talking all the time, you're going to have the opposite outcome. You're going to have poverty. That's what you're really going to have. But the foolishness of fools is their folly. There is true profit from wisdom, and poverty comes from a life devoid of wisdom, because that's what you see with a fool. He doesn't use any wisdom. He doesn't learn anything. So we see the direct opposite. Again, in the long run, wisdom pays off with prosperity. The wise men will tend to be sound financially. Why? Because they're not doing a bunch of stupid stuff. A fool, this is not a proverb, but I remember it's an old saying, a fool and his money are soon parted. Who's heard of that one? I guarantee you, if you foolish spend, you're not going to have anything. But if you use wisdom, I would believe most people, if they would use wisdom and spend their money wisely, at the end of their life, they probably would have something more than the person that just been a fool all of his life. And again, I believe in our society today, I believe that there is a lot of foolishness going on, buying a lot of foolish stuff, paying 20% interest on foolishness, and by having all these credit cards and so on. It's absolutely foolish to give 20%. I'm telling you right now, it's foolish. And that you see this in the book of Proverbs, a lot about, you can do foolish things. But I'll tell you what, if you'll do wise things, you'll do wise things. That's what we want to do, is we want to do wise things. And I think a lot of times we just can't wait. We got to have it now. And then we get in the habit of spending foolishly, and we never have anything. because we put all this stuff on credit cards, and pretty soon, that interest comes out there. I've seen some of this stuff where you paying so much interest, you are being very foolish. It's just plain foolishness. That's what we see. And again, the crown of the wise is, and you're going to be well off. And I would believe in America, it's a land of opportunity. Even to this day, I believe it is. I don't believe the generation today has the opportunities that we had as younger. I believe America is in a decline. But I'll tell you one thing that's also in a decline is people that want to work. If you will work, I believe that you'll prosper. Because if you are a good worker, you are very rare in our society today. So, I believe if you're willing to work, I think you'll do well. But then when you have that money and you do well, don't be foolish with it. Otherwise, you're not going to have anything when you're done. 14:25. A true witness delivereth souls, but a deceitful witness speaketh lies. This again is another contrast. You see, delivereth souls is connected with speaking lies. So a true witness is going to deliver souls. A deceitful witness is going to lie. What is the soul of man anyway? It's his intellect, his will, his emotions, that kind of a thing. And do you really want to be a help to somebody? I tell you what, if you want to be a help to somebody as far as their intellect, their will, their emotions, how they look at something, that's the soul. If you want to be helpful to that person, what that person needs is the truth. That's what he needs. He don't need lies. He doesn't need lies. That's what this proverb says. A true witness delivers souls. He's going to help a person. But a deceitful witness speaketh lies. Again, a true witness delivers souls, rescues souls. Telling the truth will deliver from the bondage of sin. It's not going to get you into a trap. Not telling the truth is watering down the truth and making it palatable. Lies do not deliver. Sometimes we just need the truth. You're moving in the wrong direction. You're doing something foolish. Half-truths, watering it down is not going to help. We need sometimes to hear what the truth is. You go down that way, I guarantee you're going to have problems. Again, a true witness delivers souls. Going to deliver that person from what the problem that he has. But a deceitful witness, he's just going to speak lies to him. He's not going to really want to tell him the truth because he might upset him. Because a lot of times the truth is, we say we might like to hear the truth, but sometimes the truth is we got some problems and we got some addictions and different things and we've gotten in some rut. We've got some bad habits, and we just need the truth to be delivered. That's what we need. A lot of times the truth does hurt. That's why a lot of times people, well, I'm not going to tell him. It's just going to upset him. But I'll tell you what, a true witness delivers souls, rescues souls, where it's really going to be a help to him, benefit. That's what we want to do. Lies do not deliver. Verse 26, the fear of the Lord is strong confidence. The fear of the Lord is strong confidence, and his children shall have a place of refuge. The fear of the Lord is strong confidence, and his children shall have a place of refuge. So there's no contrast on this. This is just stating something here. The fear of the Lord is strong confidence. If you really do fear the Lord, you're going to have strong confidence in the Lord. That's what you're going to do. There's a strong confidence there. But let me jump here. And his children shall have a place of refuge. Again, what is a place of refuge? You run to the Lord for refuge when you go through trouble. Let me just read what I wrote down on my paper here. When we fear the Lord, there is strong confidence in the Lord's help and blessing. There, because we are going to have every single one of us are going to have trials in our life. I guarantee you, in the world you shall have tribulation. Every single one of us are going to have trials that we go through in life. So guess what? The fear of the Lord is strong confidence. To help, we're going to get God's help and blessing. When we fear the Lord altogether, there is a place of refuge from the storms of life. If you fear the Lord, you're going to stay away from, it causes you to stay away from some things, as we're going to look in the next particular verse 27. You're going to stay away from some things. So then, because you've stayed away from those things, you've been obedient to the Lord. See, the fear of the Lord causes us to depart from evil. If you really fear God, it's going to keep you away from some of those places that the world is trying to get you to go to. If you fear God, why do we sometimes do things that we shouldn't do? Could a Christian lack fear of God? Yeah. It's not fearing God. The fear of the Lord is strong confidence. The Christian that fears the Lord will not be rattled when trouble comes. He has strong confidence in the Lord. He's done the right thing. There will be strong confidence and there will be refuge. Verse 27, the fear of the Lord is a fountain of life to depart from the snares of death. The fear of the Lord is a fountain of life to depart from the snares of death. It's either life or it's death here is what we see. The fear of the Lord, there is a wellspring of the water of life, a well of living water springing up into everlasting life. John chapter 4, verse 14, this is the woman at the well. Whosoever drinketh of the water that I shall give, Jesus told her, I shall give unto him shall never thirst, but the water that I shall give shall be in him a well of water springing up into everlasting life. The fear of the Lord will keep a wise man from the folly of sin that leads to an untimely death. Again, when we really do fear the Lord, we trust the Lord, and I guarantee you, the Lord changes our life. When I think about how different, when I consider this, my life would be if I never knew Christ. I was saved when I was 27 years old. I trust the Lord. But the truth is, the people that I would have hung around with, I remember this one guy I used to hang around. He died when he was 33 years old. And I'm going to tell you one thing right now. He died because he lived a wild, wicked life. That's why he died early. He was a drinker, a smoker. As a matter of fact, he did marijuana. I never did. But I mean, those kind of things tend to lead you to an early grave. That's what we see. I'm going to tell you that right now. Other people I think of that led a fast life, they died younger. I'm thinking of one that died at 49 years old. Some of the people that I knew from high school, even that I used to run around with, some of those people are dead. They died young. They didn't live long. Their health was wrecked, different things like that. And that's the direction I was going. And that kind of life, it really does lead to death. Verse 27 again, the fear of the Lord is a fountain of life. I guarantee you, you want to have a prosperous, whole, full life. You want really to trust Christ, have everlasting life, or do you want the snares of death, to depart from the snares of death? I tell you what, all those things out there, when I come to Christ, I departed from those things that would have led me to an early grave. That's what we really see. To depart from the snares of death. Verse 28, in the multitude of people is the king's honor. Kind of reminds you of David counting the people, doesn't it? In the multitude of people, which that was a sin. He looked at his own strength on those kind of things. But the Bible says here, the multitude of people is the king's honor. But in want of people is the destruction of the prince. Just like a country goes down in population, it it really is not good for the king. It's destruction of the prince. You know, losing multitudes and multitudes of people. I think about countries that once were very prosperous and had a lot of people. You know, even believe it or not, China. China had a one-child rule, and I'll tell you what, they've come to regret it. They've come to regret it. You know, again, in the multitude of people is the king's honor. God really told us to be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth. That's what he did. A lot of countries look at it, let's have less kids, and it's not good for the country in the long run. I guarantee you, it's a destruction. Even in our own country, even in our own country, you know, abortion was started, you know, legalized in 1973. Roe versus Wade. Hopefully, they get that thing thrown out. But I'll tell you something right now. We've killed our workforce. I'm a baby boomer. We had all the people after World War II had all these kids. You know what I'm saying? And now I'm an old man. And you know what happened in America is the push for no kids or few kids and so on and so forth. Who's going to take care of us old fogies? You know what I'm saying? It's really a destruction of the country. And here, obviously, we see in the multitude of people is the king's honor, but in want of people is the destruction of the prince. So, I mean, it's not good for a country. A king is honored as his kingdom grows, but as his kingdom shrinks, there is the destruction of the prince. Verse 29, he that is slow to wrath is of great understanding. Now, that's pretty simple, isn't it? He that is slow to wrath, somebody that doesn't get rattled real easy and fly off the handle, somebody that that he can put up with a lot. He's very forbearing. He doesn't get upset. He's slow to wrath. The Bible, that's a good quality. I tell you what, the Bible says if you are slow to wrath, it's of great understanding. But he that is hasty of spirit exalts folly, exalts foolishness. If you are quick to get angry, you will exalt folly. You're going to say a bunch of foolish things. I don't care who you are. Anger is, I've said it many times. The closest you'll ever get to the devil influence in your life is get angry. That's what we see in James chapter 3. It's earthly, it's sensual, it's devilish. That's what we really see. So I tell you what, it's not good to have a hasty spirit. I tell you what, you get mad just like that. I talked about it last week. I mean, Proverbs is filled with these things, an angry person there. Again, somebody that's slow to wrath is somebody that doesn't get angry. The person with a hasty spirit is somebody that does get angry very quickly, and they're going to say a bunch of foolish stuff. And I don't care who you are. The old preacher here, I get angry, and I'm going to say things I'm going to regret. That's just the way we're made. That's just the way it is. I don't care who you are. And this is some wisdom from God. Slow to wrath is great understanding. James chapter 1 verse 19 says, wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak. And I tell you what, those are swift to hear. You got your ears open more than you got your mouth flapping. I think most people got it the other way around. They got their lips moving and they don't listen to one thing else. They're just got their mouth going. That's really what James is saying. Wherefore, my beloved brethren, Christian, this is the way we need to be. My beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. That's a good quality. Swift to hear, slow to speak. Don't answer a question. Don't answer a matter before the person's done speaking. And I'll tell you the truth is, I believe we all can have problems with that. We're not really listening. I know I have that problem. You know, we have a tendency to like to do a lot of talking, but that's not a good quality, Be swift to hear, slow to speak, slow to wrath. For the wrath of man, verse 20, worketh not the righteousness of God. I'm going to tell you something right now again. The wrath of man is never going to work the righteousness of God. If you get upset and want to strike back, I'll guarantee you the righteousness of God is not there. That's what we see. The wrath of man worketh not the righteousness of God. You get angry, you're going to do the wrong thing. You get angry, you're going to say the wrong thing. You're not going to do what God wanted you to do. Anger is going to stop you. You're going to do exactly what the devil wants you to do. Proverbs 15:18, a wrathful man stirreth up strife. This is coming in the future here. A wrathful man stirreth up strife, but he that is slow to anger appeaseth strife. See, again, you might be getting chewed out. Again, how am I going to appease strife? Slow to anger. I tell you, you got two people screaming and hollering at each other, which, by the way, I have seen before. If one of them will at least be slow to wrath, then it can appease strife. But if you got two people that are just on each other like ugly on an ape, you're going to have problems. That's all there is to it. You're going to have some problems. A wrathful man stirreth up strife. Wrath is always going to stir up more problems. Fighting, that's what it's going to do. But he that is slow to anger appeaseth strife. If you want to put out the fire, don't throw fuel on it. You know what I'm saying? Don't be fighting also. It takes two to fight. I remember that's one thing my mom always said, it takes two to fight. You know, he did that to me. Guess what? No, it takes two to fight. That's something we need to learn. If you got two people hollering at each other, you're not going anywhere with that thing. Somebody's got to be an adult here. Somebody has to be an adult. And that being an adult is slow to anger. By the way, a quick temper exalts foolishness. Discipline of emotions is a fruit of the Spirit. It's called meekness. That's really what meekness is. It's the person that doesn't have to scream. It's that person that's slow to wrath. It's somebody that can control his emotions. That's what a meek person is. I remember hearing it, power under control and so on. But it's something that you don't have to be the right person all the time. You don't have to have the last word. You can just be quiet, slow to wrath. Don't fight fire with fire. And wrath and strife is going to be appeased. That's very important. Verse 30, a sound heart is the life of the flesh. A sound heart is the life of the flesh, but envy is rottenness of the bones. And this is this has a but in there, so it's a contrast. We see a sound heart versus envy. What is envy? Envy basically is wanting something what somebody else has, or wanting to be like somebody else. Boy, I really wish it was like her. And she's got this, she's got that, and usually it's materialistic nonsense that people look at. A lot of times you'll find out, do you really want to be like her? But the truth is, a sound heart is not going to be that way. That you don't have your thinking is not sound to be envious of somebody else. For one thing, you probably don't know that person as good as you might. You're just looking at the outside. But I'll tell you, even if that person's Miss Wonderful, to envy somebody is not sound thinking. It's not sound. You don't have a sound heart. To envy somebody else, there's again, a sound heart is life to the flesh. I tell you what, I believe that when your thinking is sound, it affects your physical condition and you just do better. Just like what is that? It's like a medicine. What is that? Does anybody remember what that is? That's coming up in Proverbs here. Well, say that, Tom. Yeah, there you go. Merry heart doeth good like a medicine. I guarantee you, what your heart is all about, how you think, makes all the difference of how you feel. And that's what. And again, to envy somebody else is an unsound thinking. Your thinking is skewed. It's messed up to envy somebody else. It's just wrong. Because I'll tell you something right now. When you do envy somebody else, you really hate that other person because you want to be like them so much. You can't stand them because you look at them as better than you or having more than you or whatever that problem would be. And you know what that is? But envy, the rottenness of the bones. It hurts you so much on the inside. It hurts the person physically. Their health is not as good as the person that envies. Envy does so much to destroy a person. Again, a sound heart affects the way we walk. If my thinking isn't right, my walk is not going to be right. A healthy heart, is sound in principles of truth, righteousness, holiness, love, wisdom, mercy. A sound heart is sound thinking versus envy that eats like a cancer of the bones. Here is what we see. Sound heart is healthy. That's really a spiritual man. And what we see, envy, not healthy, eats away from on the inside. That really is the carnal man. The carnal man is going to envy. The spiritual man is going to be content. The spiritual man, if you really are a spiritual man, no matter what you got or who, you are going to be content with who you are. I guarantee you, when you're envying somebody else, it's because you are not content with who you are. That's what we really see. You're not, but how about this? Lord, what would you want me to be? Be what the Lord would want you to be. Don't worry about what somebody or you think somebody else is all about. That envy is such a terrible thing to destroy a person, just like anger is. A lot of times some of these things go hand in hand. These are deeds of the flesh. That's what they are. Envy is a deed of the flesh. Anger is a deed of the flesh. I guarantee you can see that the person's walking in the flesh when you're angry, when you envy, and those kinds of things. That's all fleshliness. That's all it is. Verse 31. He that oppresseth the poor reproacheth his maker. I think that's pretty simple. But, and here's the contrast, he that honoreth him, honoreth God, hath mercy on the poor. So, what we're going to, if I oppress the poor, what is oppressing somebody? What is oppressing the poor? How about not paying him? Or trying to keep him down? Or you don't rejoice when you see somebody that's less than you prosper, or maybe more than you prosper. That's you want to keep him down. That's oppressing him. That's wrong. You ought to rejoice. Now, I don't care who it is. When you see somebody being blessed, prosper, get a better job than you got, guess what you ought to be? You ought to be happy for that person. That's what you ought to be. Don't be envious. Don't be upset. How come never anybody notices me? Well, maybe you ought to have an inward look. That's the truth. Quit belly aching. Quit belly aching about things. He that oppresseth the poor reproacheth his maker. The reproach here is the direct opposite of honor. You're not honoring God to do those things. But he that honoreth him, honoreth God, hath mercy on the poor. You want to honor God? Be merciful to the poor. You want to reproach your maker? Just beat somebody down. Just keep them down and keep them down. This is the kind of thing. God doesn't want us to be that way. When you oppress the poor, you are reproaching God. You honor God when you have mercy on the poor. It's just that simple. Verse 32, the wicked is driven away in his wickedness, but the righteous hath hope in his death. You can see that first part. Again, it's a contrast. The wicked is driven away in his wickedness. You start a wicked life, I'm going to tell you what, that thing just gets worse and worse and worse. You start going down that road, it's just going to continue to get worse all the time. You're going to become more and more wicked. I guarantee you that's the way I was before I was saved. I could see myself going down, down, down. I remember thinking I have really departed. I was lost as a goose in a snowstorm, but I could recognize that I had really drifted from how I was raised and what I was taught. And I drifted away from those things. And again, the wicked is driven away in his own wickedness. It's your own wickedness is going to be the thing that's going to take you further and further and further away. But the righteous hath hope in his death. You live right, and I'll tell you what, there's some hope in your death. You're really, when you live a righteous life and you're right with God, you know something? There's hope in your death. You don't. I would believe you're not going to fear death. You're not going to have the regrets. How would you? I guarantee you, every one of us were raised with some standards of conduct and morals and so on and so forth. When you're an old person and you're ready on your deathbed, I guarantee you, when you have lived a wicked life, you're going to have tremendous regrets. But if you've lived for Christ, you're going to have hope, and there's going to have hope in his death. Have hope in his death. Because you're going to stand before God. Every one of us are going to stand at the judgment seat of Christ. If you're a Christian tonight, you're going to stand at the judgment seat of Christ and give an account. That's what you're going to do. Do you want to be fearful, or you want to have regrets? Verse 33. Wisdom resteth in the heart of him that hath understanding. That's pretty simple. Wisdom resteth in the heart. The heart is the person's thinking. There's wisdom in his thinking. It rests there of him that hath understanding. Remember how it comes. According to the book of Proverbs, I believe first is knowledge. What is knowledge? You know something. God's taught you something. So there's some things that you know. Understanding is you know why. And so you have some understanding. A lot of times you might know some, but you don't know how it really works. But understanding is you really see how this applies, is what you see. And then wisdom is using knowledge. You're right. What God taught you, it's applying it in the correct way. That's what we see. That's what wisdom is. And wisdom rests in the heart of him that hath understanding, because you got some understanding and there's some wisdom there. But that which is in the midst of fools is made known. Fools don't listen to wisdom, they listen to fools, is what we really see here. Wisdom grows out of understanding. Knowledge absorbed and studied leads to understanding, which in turn develops wisdom. There are no shortcuts to wisdom, I guarantee you. I think today, if you're hanging around fools, you listen to fools, you don't really listen to God's wisdom, and it's not really resting in your heart. It's not there. You really haven't been taught by God. All you've done is listen to a bunch of crazy foolishness, worldliness, whatever it would be. You're going to end up, everybody's going to know it. There are no shortcuts to wisdom, learning, reflecting, which I remember the prudence is thinking about something before you act. Experience. I just soon learn from the experience of the word of what God says, believe God, and not have to go through that learning experience, the school of hard knocks myself. In contrast, fools don't take the time to learn, but rather they make known to others all they know. And again, the old saying, an empty wagon rattles the most. I think Tom, you surely heard that one, the empty wagon rattles the most. The guy with a fool, he's talking all the time. He don't stop and listen. He don't really know anything. He's not going to have any wisdom because he didn't really pay any attention. So then when you have to do it, just like going to school. If you go to school and you're talking over here, you got a bunch of class clowns over here, and guess what? They're talking, not listening to the teacher, and guess what? Then when they have to know to do something, they don't know. It's like they missed that day of school. It's like they weren't really there. It was just foolish waste of time. And again, the foolish talking instead of listening and learning from God. Righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. Well, I love that passage. I think I'm going to stop there because I think I'll have a little bit more on that because I'll tell you what, that I think about our country. Righteousness exalts a nation. I see our country going down the tubes. I read I read the editor letter to the editor tonight, which it had something about Mike Flood in there. And he's a legislate guy in Nebraska here, which I believe that he's a good man in my opinion. But you could see the person that wrote the letter was a pro-abortion person. He added Flood because I don't know what he would have done, but it would have had something to do with he stood against this easy to abortion type stuff or something like that. But I'm thankful that somebody stands for something. We need people like that in our nation. Because I tell you what, our nation don't have too many people like that. Righteousness exalts a nation. I don't care what nation it is. Generally, when we think about the Bible, we think of how Israel is. I believe that Israel is number one nation, and it's going to be the number one nation. God's plan was that, and it's going to be in the future. But I'll tell you what, right now, righteousness exalts a nation. If you want a nation that's way up here, like I would believe America used to be, righteousness exalts a nation. Sin is a reproach to any people. I guarantee America does not have respect. It does not have the respect. I don't know how it could. I believe that the foreigners are laughing at us. I believe the Chinese are laughing at us. The foolishness that we have, the sinfulness that we have in this country, the immorality that we have. I remember when Bill Clinton was president, it was an embarrassment to even have somebody like that as a president because of his unrighteous activities. He was a whoremonger. That's what he was. And it was a shame to have a president like that. I'll be honest with you. Foreign country people laughed at him with the Monica Lewinsky scandal and so on. It made us look terrible. Righteousness exalts a nation. Sin is a reproach to any people. Let's go to the Lord in prayer. Let's have some prayer requests.